countryside. I wonder, how did Scotland get its beautiful landscape? What happened and when did it happen? Well, it's a very old story and we're going to find out a bit about it now.
So first things first, let's be clear, we're talking about the physical features of Scotland's landscape. These are natural features, not man-made. So the coastline, the hills, the glens, mountains, islands, rivers and lochs. We're going to start off at the coastline, children. So I think we should head there now. Come on.
So we have arrived at the coast where you live to explore a bit further about how Scotland had its landscape made and how it's changing over time. So how did these enormous rocks that are all around us just now actually get here? As you can see, the waves are crashing in against the shore just now, and we're going to explore how that had an effect on the shape that Scotland is today.
Scotland's mainland has over 6,000 miles of coastline. Beaches, rocks and cliffs at the coastline are always changing. This is due to 3 reasons: erosion, deposition and changing sea levels. So we'll start with erosion. Now, depending on the type of rock at the coastline, it can be eroded over a period of time. Rocks like clay and sandstone are easily worn away. Rocks like granite or slate are much harder and would take much longer to erode. Secondly, deposition. That basically means material is being deposited or washed up on the coastline. Sand and pebbles on beaches may have come from the cliffs and left on the beach. The next part of our journey is to explore the mountains, hills and glens. So we're going to head inland again, children. Come on. Not far from the coast is a wonderful hill called Knockdolian, and I want to find out why it is known as the False Craig.
So, the story of the False Craig. It's an ancient story of when things were being brought and taken from Scotland by boat. Sailors sailing the seas would be looking for the light on the Ailsa Craig to guide their ships safely round the rocks. But what happened was, there were people called wreckers, and these wreckers were naughty and up to no good. They would light great beacons like this on the top of Knockdolian. The sailors in the ocean would think that this was a light from the Ailsa Craig, taking them perilously in the wrong direction. What happened was, of course, the ships hit the coast, hit the rocks and smashed, and these wreckers could actually go and collect all the things that were on the ships, leaving Knockdolian known as the False Craig. A great tale of deception and naughtiness. Fantastic.
So just how did hills like Knockdolian and the hills that surround Farmer William get to be there? We're going to carry out, first of all, a bit of kitchen science. Come on. So to carry out a simple experiment, you will need a pile of fabric, 2 boxes like these ones. Put your layers of fabric in the middle and carefully squeeze together the boxes. And what you're left behind is a mountain in the middle. This is the mountain, and the 2 boxes, of course, were the tectonic plates of the earth. Let's explore this a little bit further. So the science behind what we've just seen helps us to understand why mountains are there and hills. Far under the ground, there were many, many layers of rock. And as the tectonic plates of the earth slide together over millions of years, these special mountains are almost squeezed up out the ground, like we saw with the towels, and the boxes reflected the tectonic plates, and the towels were the mountains emerging from the depths. So after the mountains were formed, there was a great ice age happening in Scotland. This is where great glaciers were moving their way slowly through the landscape, changing it to the landscape that we know today. Now, before the glaciation, most of the valleys in Scotland were V-shaped. However, as these glaciers moved their way through the landscape, the valleys turned into U-shaped valleys. They were widened and deepened. But just what is a glacier? Well, a glacier is a large, slow-moving river of ice formed from compacted layers of snow that slowly deforms and flows in response to gravity. We're going to carry out an experiment now to find out how glaciers changed the landscape. So to carry out this experiment, you will need some corn flour, put it in a bowl and carefully mix with some water. Spoon about a golf ball size amount onto a piece of plastic or greaseproof paper. Observe the way it moves. Continue to add fresh corn flour mixture. This is to represent fresh snow falling on the glacier. The next thing you'll need are some little pebbles, some soil and some sand. Begin to build up layers around your glacier. Continue to add fresh snow on the top of the glacier and then observe just what happens to the glacier. Begin to add some rocks on top of your cornflour glacier, some soil, some sand and some debris landing on the top, and keep observing what happens. And what you'll find is that the glacier that you've created begins to cut its way through the landscape that you've created with your sand and soil. So let's just check that we've understood how glaciation did affect the landscape of Scotland. So what we now know is that the snow that formed the glaciers is subject to repeated freezing and thawing. Under the immense pressure and weight of layers of ice and snow above it, makes it denser and faster. The lower layers of ice flow like fluid, allowing the whole glacier to move freely, although quite slowly. They usually flow down a slope, but can also be driven on by the accumulation of new snow, creating thicker ice and surface slope. Rocks and sediments are added to glaciers in two ways. The first is plucking, basically taking rocks and debris with it. The second is abrasion. The ice slides over the land and acts like sandpaper, smoothing and polishing the landscape as it goes. Now, even today, you can see grooves and markings left on huge rocks that show how the rivers of ice, the glaciers, gouged out vast paths as they moved through the bedrock and left behind the Scotland that we've got today. Brilliant. I'll see you again tomorrow, boys and girls. Bye.